Hi guys! So I wanted to talk to you guys about a new series that I feel like is not really talked about very often, and it's one of my favorite like manga series that is super good and really fun, and it's a bit incomplete. There are only four that are published right now. The fifth one is to be published, I want to say March of this year in English. Um, from what I have seen to be coming out pretty soon. So hopefully that will happen. And we'll be updating if it does. I have high hopes that it will come out pretty soon. I'm really excited about it. But I just kind of wanted to share with you guys because I love to talk about kind of like under noticed kind of like books, and it's one of my favorite Omegaverse kind of like mangas, and I just kind of wanted to share it with everybody. Yeah, so it's called Megumi Tsugumi. I could be pronouncing it wrong, but the oh well. So this is book one, and basically it is about this Omega who doesn't really want to subscribe to how society wants all of the Omegas to um, like utilize suppressants in the same way that everyone else does, and he likes to push through all of his heats with his iron will, and he likes to also kind of facilitate helping a lot of other Omegas with, I guess you could say, fighting and beating up other alphas that like to go after Omegas that are maybe just kind of like succumbing to heat in the society around them, and because it's kind of like a alpha oppressive society, and he likes to kind of just like stick up for the little guy, where he is also a little guy as well. He doesn't like to be seen as only his designation. He's like, I am me regardless of my designation, and I'm not going to really let other people define me. And that's one of the things that I love so much about Tazumi, is that he is like, I am me, and I'm not letting anybody define me, and I'm not gonna let these medications that I don't like and I don't want be forced upon me because the rest of you can't handle yourselves. And I think that is one of the things that I love most about Omega Verses, is that it kind of like calls to um, the way that people talk about situations in society as well, where there's a lot of like victim blaming, where people kind of say that, you know, you bring upon yourself negative situations that happen to you. You did it to yourself because of the way you dress or the way that you look, or these things happen to you because you've done these things. And that's what I love about Omegaverse as well, because they bring to light, you know, you are these people and you have these kind of situations that you cannot escape. And I love the character that says, I have this inescapable piece of me, but I'm not going to let that define me. And I really love that about that character. And then you meet our other male lead, Megumi, and he also is a alpha character who, well, he's an alpha, not also, because Tsuzumi is an omega. But he also has that same kind of mentality where he doesn't want to be defined by his designation as well, because he doesn't like that he can be controlled in some ways by in Omega's kind of like heats, or he can be controlled outside of himself. He has a weakness that is outside of his own body, and he doesn't appreciate that. And he also doesn't like the way that people see weakness in um, Omegas and how people look down upon them, because he in his society is seen as one of the elite alphas, because he comes from a alpha family. His dad is a really high standing alpha, so he is seen, and he is one of the ideal candidates in his society, but he doesn't want to kind of be only seen as that. And so you kind of have these two characters who are kind of like both in these two positions of not really power, but one who is in power, and then the other one who's trying to fight outside of being the lowest seen in their society. And also there just kind of is a lot of fighting between them, almost, because sometimes there's just kind of like aggressive tendencies in teenage people as well. But for Tsugumi specifically, he gets into a lot of fights. He tends to fight a lot of alphas, and he gets into fights with people specifically just about everywhere. And it doesn't specifically say alphas. He gets into fights with betas, which are just kind of like neutral people, generally speaking, in their society. But he gets into fights with a lot of people. One, because he doesn't use suppressants, and he beats up people who attack other Omegas, and he beats up people who attack him as well. So he gets into fights with lots of people all the time, and he's pretty much known between many of the different schools in their society as kind of like this crazy guy who's always getting into fights. And so this is kind of like where their two worlds mesh together, is he kind of ends up beating up some of Megumi's friends because they were trying to assault this random girl, and he saves her and beats them up. And they tell Megumi, he's like, yeah, he was beating us up. They don't tell him why. They just say, oh yeah, he was beating us up, and this is pretty much the catalyst of which brings them all together, is their look for vengeance. And this is how they all cross paths. And inevitably, you see that he actually is kind of a wild card, where at first you kind of think he's kind of similar to his friends, just kind of like looking for fights and stuff like that. But when Tsuzumi's like, yeah, sure, let's fight, doesn't really care, because he's very much that kind of like nonchalant kind of a character. He's, I don't want to say simple, because I think he's actually a very, very complex person. He thinks of things in a very exact way. Like there's not a lot of filler for him. He has things that they go in specific boxes for him. And so when someone's like calls him out, he's like, yeah, okay, sure. I think you are if you're friends with these people, or if you are calling me out for a fight, he's like, yeah, fine, I don't care. If you or someone doing something wrong, he's like, he's gonna call that wrongness. He's like, that's it. Things just are very, very specific for him. And I think it just gives his character a lot of depth. which I think some people could miss because he just seems like a surface level simple person. But as you kind of like get deeper into this book, you kind of see how they end up kind of like coming together very quickly for this fight, and which inevitably happens is Tsugumi comes to this fight actually in heat, and which kind of throws this group of alphas off, and they're like, whoa, 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 I think there's like an Omega around, we should like, they're all really kind of done in by that, which is completely hilarious. And yeah, Chizumi's like, yeah, no, that's me, and they're all like, whoa, 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 which brings Megumi into the situation, trying to kind of like be the good guy and be like, I don't want to fight you while you're in this kind of like a situation, I want a fair fight. And inevitably this is kind of like the moment that brings the two of them together, in a way. These small interactions between the two of them, when it comes to them not fighting because of the heat, and it ends up with him like, here, take my suppressants because of what you have going on, don't come outside like this when you're in this kind of like of a state. And he's like, I don't really want to do what you're telling me to do. And he's just like, I'm trying to help you. And he's just kind of like, no. And ultimately, it kind of like brings their physical, what would you call it, chemistries? Or not even chemistries, it brings their like sense to cross each other's paths. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. It brings their sense to cross each other's paths because of the fact that they end up, he gives him something with his scent on it, and that then makes his scent just kind of like be stuck with Tsugumi. Tsugumi then gives this object back. Then his scent is then given to Megumi. And this kind of just like entangles the two together. And this is kind of like how they become further entangled together. And this is kind of like where they get locked together with multiple amounts of this sporadic heat situation that Tsugumi has, and they kind of like fall together because of Tsuzumi's inconsistent heat situations. And this is kind of like how they start falling into this kind of like situationship with each other. And that's kind of like what continuously happens the rest of this book, where they have this situationship where every time Tsugumi is in some sort of physical need because of heat, Megumi is like, fine, I will help you out because of this kind of like baseline connection that they have formed, because they've crossed each other's paths with each other's scents. And they continue to do that. And that leads you into book 2. And book 2 is where they kind of continue the situationship, and it starts to get like a little bit deeper. And this is where Megumi starts to realize like he develops real feelings for Tsugumi, and Tsugumi doesn't really understand it, and it kind of like slowly but surely starts to kind of like turn into a love story. And while these things start happening, they're start to become other people who want to keep them apart, where you have a best friend who's been like secretly in love with Megumi, who tries to keep them apart. You have other people who try to like interfere. So you have like, you know, little tiny conflicts that get involved in this relationship that kind of like derails their situation. So it's not just them kind of like getting stuck in the heats. Like you get like that whole situation that kind of like settles, where you no longer have Tsugumi like getting into fights with people all the time because he's like running around in heat trying to like dissipate his pain. You have him mostly being in control because of Megumi, and then you get a situation because of his best friend. You have a new issue because of his best friend. You have like his friend becoming an issue for him because now Megumi realizes that he is like, I really want to be serious with you. Tsugumi is not quite understanding why. And so they're starting to realize that there's something more serious happening. And that's what's basically happening in book 2, is it's like, this is something more, and everyone is trying to navigate the deeper relationship. And it's like a slow-ish love story, and then the constant need to intertwine their parents in this, because if I did not mention, this whole story happens while they're in high school. So there's that as well. Yeah. So you have that whole issue, and then you have Megumi's best friend who inevitably kidnaps him, drugs him, and tries to assault him because he is in love with him, and he is angry that he has fallen in love with Tsugumi, and he is inevitably saved by Tsugumi, and Tsugumi, you know, they have their, you know, moments of love, and, you know, they're like, I'm explaining to you how the depths of my emotions for you, as we get rid of your best friend because he is trash. And that's pretty much the consensus of book 2. And then as well as we get like little snippets at the end of the book, which we talk about Tsuzumi's dads at the very end of the book, where they kind of like give you pieces of their love story and how they fell in love, and how they got together. And that's pretty much that, you know, that's the end of that story. You know, it's just kind of, and there's a bunch of those throughout the last 2 books where they give you pieces of their story, how they got together, when they started doing things like that. There's a bunch of those. They're not really that important. I don't really care about them. Sometimes I don't read them when I reread the stories because I don't think they matter to me that much. Yeah, they don't matter to me that much. Here is book 3. And book 3 is basically a conflict about a new friend of Tsuzumi's who comes along. And this is basically a person who... this is not book 3. I'm sorry. This is book 3. They are all out of order because they're obviously out of range. But in book 3, we are, again, getting ready to have a new best friend for Tsuzumi. Not even a best friend, but Tsuzumi, he also is one of these people who really doesn't care about a lot of people, and he doesn't even really try to remember who anyone is. he pretty much just cares about his family and Megumi. And realistically speaking, he really doesn't even try to remember most people's names. Yeah. So then this random guy tells him that he wants to be his like apprentice or something, and he wants to learn from him, and he's like, I don't know about that. But then he kind of just like keeps following him around and wants to learn from him and doesn't want to leave Tsugumi alone, so to speak. And so Tsuzumi's like, okay, I'll take you under my wing. I'll teach you about being me, and so to speak. But he doesn't really have the truest of intentions. And we eventually find out it's because the guy who said he was a beta was really an alpha, and he basically kind of like attacks Tsugumi at the water park at some point or another, and like lightly kind of bites Tsugumi. Because of that, I don't know. He just decided he wanted him in his world of being his friend or whatever he wanted to be, his apprentice, decided he wanted him, and then attacked him. And it didn't really go very well. And that's pretty much the bulk of book 3, is just someone pretending to be his friend who just really was trying to secretly cajole him so he could assault him when he had his guard down. And then really wasn't listening to any of the things he was trying to teach him the entire time, because he was like, I want to be your friend because you don't let anything about your designation keep you back. And it's like everything he taught him and told him, he actually didn't listen at all. I thought it was amazing. It was like you didn't listen to a single thing he said to you the entire time. It was really interesting. And then book 4 is the same guy trying to get revenge from Megumi from keeping Tsugumi away from him. That's basically what happens in book 4. The guy's trying to get revenge because he wants to be able to have access to Tsugumi, because he doesn't think it's fair that Tsugumi won't talk to him or interact with him, because he's like, he's my friend. And it's like, I don't think you know what friendship really is, because I think making someone feel like they're not safe and doing the ultimate crime against someone, which could be, putting a bond across them that they can't escape from you, would be the ultimate crime. So I think doing that could possibly be why he doesn't want to talk to you, but he seems to think it's all Megumi. So then he brings himself upon him to find a bunch of random people to have some sort of street battle. And then he thinks that it's just to talk, and is surprised when it turns into a full-out brawl. Seems surprised. But it does. It does turn into a full-out brawl. Fun stuff. If you love lots of people fighting and having aggressive things going on, this series is definitely for you. Definitely for you if you love people fighting and hugging and loving and kissing. It does still end on a cliffhanger. Like I said, the 5th one is not quite out yet. It does just stop. I can't tell you what exactly is gonna happen next. I think we are pretty much, it just kind of stops with everyone still being mad at the guy for the fight. And it's alluding to the fact that Megumi's dad is trying to arrange some sort of marriage, possibly between someone, because Megumi and Tsugumi were trying to, mate and wanted to get married at some point in time. But, he was waiting. But it seems, because his dad is, Megumi's dad is like anti-Omega, even though his sons, oh, I might not have mentioned that Megumi's original actual birth mother was an Omega that his dad assaulted, but takes no blame for the fact that he committed a crime against this woman and then stole her baby and then raised her with another person, another alpha. He's like, it is all that woman's fault. Because her medication just wasn't that strong that day, so it's all her fault that he buckled. So, and then he stole her baby. Because that's what he decided. And she never saw the baby again after it was born. Interesting. But with that being said, this is still the best series ever. I've reread the series so many times. It is so fun. If you love Omegaverse, this is one of the best traditionally published Omegaverses that you could possibly read. I think you would have a lot of fun with it. If you've read it, let me know. Comment down below. Yeah. All right. Bye.